Hello everyone. This is my 75-gallon red cherry shrimp tank, and we're going to do a lot of work on it, and we're going to transform it into this. We're going to get these shrimp into shape, and there's a whole bunch of awesome plecos to see. So stick around and see what I do with this tank. So I always say one of the biggest keys to success with shrimp tanks is consistency. Having the same water parameters, having the same everything, having everything stay the same as much as you possibly can. Well, what that means is I like to keep my tanks as hands-off as possible, but eventually the time comes where you got to do something about it. And as you can see, we got mounds and mounds and mounds of moss. Moss has overtaken my cute little fancy Anubiuses that I've had. They are like 6 years old, and that's all the bigger they are. We got long fin, lemon blue eye, bristlenose plecos in here. So let's get going on getting this tank in better shape. So here's something else I've been meaning to talk about for a while. One of you viewers out there, Rick, he come to me about making some tank decals, and we played around some designs, and this is what we ended up coming with. There's the different colors of shrimp. And so if any of you guys out there are interested, let me know in the comments and we'll see about making more. Okay, so let's get down to work on this tank. So this tank, actually, I've sold so many shrimp out of here, especially when I was doing wholesale. I would sell 700 shrimp out of this tank at a time and never have any problems. Well, this spring, I started selling a whole bunch of these guys. I think I had the price too cheap, and I was selling a whole bunch, and I really ended up selling too many. Well, at the same time, the tank was struggling. I kept noticing buried females dying. Well, turns out something come out of the balance with and the problem ended up being my lights were old. They didn't burn out, but my lights were super old and dim. The moss wasn't growing, the plants weren't growing. The tank wasn't happy. So I ended up getting new brighter lights, and I think that was in June or July. And here in just a few months, I went from a few little piles of moss that hadn't grown or done hardly anything in a few months before that, and now the entire tank is enveloped in just mats and mats of moss. And as soon as the moss and plants started growing really good again, then the shrimp just started booming. Well, I guess I can't really say booming, not compared to what it used to be doing a couple years ago when I was doing wholesale. But I did notice a whole bunch of baby shrimp. The shrimp population is significantly increased. And so I figured that the moss was getting out of control. I needed to get some more moss. I needed to harvest some moss to sell on the website. So I figured this would be the perfect time to harvest a bunch of this moss, get this tank tidied up, and then before the shrimp numbers get crazy, do a good hard culling on these shrimp. And so that's what we're going to do today. We're tidying up all this moss, get the tank cleaned up some. Then we're going to go over all these shrimp with a fine-tooth comb. So I just love when I pull out all this moss and you get a better read of what was really going on in this tank. Now, I knew I was seeing more and more shrimp, but I had no idea just how many there were. And another thing, I knew I had a good number of baby plecos in here. But when I pulled out the moss, I was like, oh my gosh, there are tons and tons of little baby long fin lemon blue eye plecos, and they also throw some short fins. So none of them are all long fins, but I mean, there's pretty evenly shrimp distributed all throughout this tank right now. And the rocks, now I didn't forget I had those rocks in there. I like to put the moss around the base of the rocks and then let them grow up over the rocks. It keeps from a big dead spot forming underneath the moss. Alright, so now that the moss is clear, let's do a time lapse, throwing some algae wipers in here. See just how many shrimp and plecos we got. Now in bigger tanks, you don't get them all as concentrated as you do in the smaller tanks. But you still get a pretty good group gathered. And look at all those pretty awesome plecos. Look at all the little tiny white babies. Those guys look so cool in there with all those shrimp. But as you can see, I'm starting to call. And the good thing here with these red shrimp is like 99% of the time, you don't even have to worry about calling the females. The females in this line are solid as can be, but it's the males. And the males, they're always zooming around the tank, and it's a lot easier to see the males zooming across the tank and to check out when you don't have to really worry about calling them females. Because this line of reds, it throws no reallys, it's just varying grades of reds. And you might get some really low quality males, but they're still red cherry shrimp. So this line's really, yeah, this line is super, super solid. So let's take a look at them. Wow. They really do look pretty good. They look better than I thought they would be, to be honest. Once you get all that moss out of there and get them all concentrated, you get a really good idea of what you're dealing with. And I was definitely pleasantly surprised, because when the whole tank is caked in a layer of moss, the ones you see most are the males swimming around, and those are the worst ones. So I was seeing all these really bad males swimming around. Get with the zoomies, and you get all the moss out. The overall colony looks super, super good. Here are all those lower ones we got in the specimen container. You can see there's a lot of shrimp in there. So let's take them over here to the Skittles tank, and always like seeing a whole bunch of shrimp going in the Skittles tank. I'd guess there's might be close to 100 shrimp in there. I think they're starting to have problems because there's so many shrimp in there. During the time it took me to call it, I was glad I got them out when I did. They just all balled up like that. I was afraid there might be a dead one in there, and they was all eating their dead buddy. But as you can see, they all come out of it as soon as they hit the ball. The ball of shrimp hits the ground. It's like, whoop. They just kind of spring out and start doing their thing. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of red males, and I think I did get 3 or 4 females. But it was all, and then you get them in here, they don't look so bad when they're in this tank. This tank has a little better light. They really ain't that. I mean, these are the worst males there are in there, and these are the ones I got out. We didn't get it perfect, but we got tons and tons of them, and now the Skittles tank has a bunch of red shrimp in there. See, red cherry shrimp. There's definitely way worse red cherry shrimp out there than that. And these are the ones I pulled out of there. And now see this right here, I got this because this is why I think everyone should do a Skittles tank. Look at that one off shrimp right there. That thing is amazing. Wow, look at that. All right, let's talk about these long, thin lemon blue eye plecos. I have a reverse trio. What that means is I have 2 males and 1 female. You actually do not want 2 females and 1 male like you do when you're breeding a lot of other kinds of fish and shrimp and stuff like that, because the males do not eat when they're guarding the eggs. And if the male spawns with this female and doesn't eat for a couple weeks guarding these eggs and goes to another female, he needs a break. So you got 2 males and 1 female. They can, as long as, like you saw there, I have a cave on that side of the tank. I got a cave all the way on the other side of the tank. It kind of eliminates the friction you can get sometimes with long fin plecos. And these guys, compared to your regular short fins, they're so goofy and slow. It's kind of funny when you watch them do battle. I have a little clip of them I'm going to try to add in here of them doing battle. Yes, I was able to find it. They was going at it all evening one day, just for like 3 or 4 days ago, and I took this little, they almost look like a yin and yang sign there for a minute or two sometimes when they get to going at it. But you can see they're so big and slow and goofy, I don't think anyone's hurting anyone. So I used to breed a bunch of chocolates and albino short fins in here and kind of quit doing it. And so I figured I'd give Plecos another shot in this tank. I think I'm off to a pretty good start. It's looking pretty good for the Plecos. All right, so now we've got all the moss taken out. We've got the shrimp cold, and we talked about the Plecos. So now we're going to put back in some moss, because we still got to have moss in here, of course. So we're going to put some moss back in here. And I like to tuck it into the rocks. I said something about that earlier. I keep these rocks in here. And I like to tuck the moss in around the edges of the rocks. And then the moss will grow up on top of the rocks and form great big mounds. Now, it'll still form a great big mound without the rock, but what ends up happening, and when I started doing it this way, using the rocks, is eventually all that moss underneath is just going to die. It's going to shade itself out as it grows higher and higher and higher on top of itself. It's going to shade itself out. You're going to have a great big dead muck mess right there in the middle. And I think placing the rock in there helps it, but keeps that from happening. So I'm just going to keep some moss around the rocks and along the back edge of the tank, and let nature take its course here in 2 or 3 months. Here probably sometime this winter, this tank will be in the exact same shape it just was. And I like to leave my moss on my filter intakes. I like the way it looks. It covers up the sponges. So I left that moss alone. In the end, I took out 100% of the moss, and I probably ended up putting about 20 or 30% back in. All right, we got her all painted up and everything's done, but we've made a heck of a mess. Look at how stirred up this is. And now I'm going to show you guys what I like to do in this tank after I stir it all up, how to get it clear. I have 2 hang-on back filters, the biggest Aqua Clear and the biggest Aqueon. So this is pillow stuffing, quilt batting. It's called Polyfill, and this works excellent as picking up fines after we stirred everything up. So after I stir everything up in my tanks with hang-on backs, you can stuff a big old wad of this right there where the water's pouring out at, and this will catch a lot of fines. Now, as you'll see here in a little bit, there's going to be lots of stuff continually kicked up, because where we removed all that moss, there was a buildup of mulm underneath. Now, after we take the moss up, that buildup is going to get dispersed into the tank. The Plecos are going to kick it up, and the filter current is going to kick it up. But that's all right. The filters will eventually get it, and that's why we're adding in this quilt batting to get all the fines out. Now, this will take a few days to get it crystal clear after stirring it up this much. And like as I said, the Plecos will continually always stir it up until they get all the muck that's built up right there on the surface. So after taking all the moss out and putting some back in, this is the moss that we got left. I got a lot of moss out of that tank. Look at all that. Handfuls and handfuls and handfuls. Wow, that's a lot of moss. All right, so here we are the next day, and things have cleared up nicely, but most importantly, all that mulm and stuff that was laying on the surface is not there anymore. The only spot of mulm I see is right there in between the piles of moss. And what that is the filter current. This tank has a lot of filter flow, and the Plecos, they go around, they dig around, they kick it all up. And it's not, while not perfectly clear, it is pretty good. And I mean, it's never going to be perfectly clear until, like I said, for a few days, because these Plecos are going to be kicking it up, and eventually the filters will get it and it'll all look good. I'm looking forward to seeing how this tank does now. I think it's really on the edge of really bouncing back and making a whole lot of shrimp and lots and lots of Plecos. This tank is doing good. I knew it was doing better, but it's doing even better than I thought. Thank you guys for watching. Bye.